Welcome to the tutorial for my third publicly released pattern, the Greedy Clutch. This is a bag that I actually designed for some family members last year when I was looking for something to make for them for Christmas. And I didn't want to make anything too big because both of them were used to carrying smaller bags. So this is the smallest bag I have created to date. Not including the little poo bag carrying baggy thingy that goes with the dog carrying bag that I've designed, which will be a released pattern at some point in the future. But I have other patterns to do ahead of that, so I won't get into that one. But so this is the Greedy Clutch, and it comes with the option of the wristlet strap or the handle. And you can feel free to make both or one. But there's also so many different things that you could do with this bag if you wanted to. For instance, one of my testers actually made a wristlet band to go on the back of her bag so that when you carry it as a clutch without the wristlet strap or the handle here, you've got the little, I guess it's a clutch strap, not a wristlet strap, to hold it on your hand. You could also do a long chain shoulder handle, shoulder strap, or you could do a crossbody. You could make an all fabric strap. It does not have to have chains on it whatsoever. Inside, you could do a narcissist flap pocket where you put in a little zipper in here and just kind of have a little coin purse, or even if you just like put a zipper like right here on the side and have a little change purse, that would be cute. This one comes with 10 card slots, and you also have blank space on the opposite side, so you could put a zipper pocket or a slip pocket or both. You could also modify the card slots to turn it into a large slip pocket in the back, or you could chop the number in half and have just 5 card slots and then maybe do a slip pocket on the side. Or you can completely omit the credit card slots if you don't like those and just do a zipper pocket and a slip pocket on the inside. Or you can have no pockets and no credit card slots, whatever you want. You could maybe even add a little divider in the center if you wanted to. You could do a zipper pocket on the back. There's space under the flap for you to add a zipper pocket on the front. Also, if you wanted your flap to be a little more loose, you could bump up the snap location on the front of the bag. There's any number of things that you could do to modify this, so totally up to you. I will warn you, I started doing this video very, very late at night, and I stopped very, very late or early in the morning, so I do get things kind of mixed up a little bit. I apologize for that, but everything is accurate in the pattern, and I stayed as close to the instructions as I possibly could. But sometimes my brain got away from me. So don't hold that against me. Just follow along if you want, and watch me make this bag. Okay, so first we're going to start with the prep of your pieces. Using the pattern pieces, I would suggest cutting a hole into the spot where it shows where the magnet goes. That way you can lay your pattern piece right over your cutout piece to mark where you're going to put it. I take it a little bit further sometimes, and I'll make sort of a crosshairs section right over my mark so that I can line up where I'm going to be putting my magnet and prepare it with a piece of Decoville Heavy. So I've gone ahead and done that on the exterior front. I also prepped my exterior flap piece because I wasn't sure if I was going to be using a riveted magnet or a pronged magnet. I did decide to use a pronged magnet, so I went and put the Decoville Heavy piece on my lining. And then I also have the back side. Since I am using a metal bag tag, I've gone ahead and prepped the area for that as well. I like to put mine about 4 inches down from the top. And then the first part we're going to start on is going to be all of the strappy bits. So we've got the anchor tabs, we've got the handle pieces, and we've got the wristlet strap. And if you've decided to use any stabilizer in these pieces, you will want to have them put on before you go through any of this, just like the other pieces here. And I forgot to mention, because you know I'm tired at 1:30 in the morning, that for your foam, I typically would recommend flex foam when you're using a much thinner exterior, something like cotton or very thin faux leather. But because I'm using a thicker smooth vinyl, this one's from Sidolce, I am using a fusible fleece. Just because I want that firm or the foamy feel, but I don't want the thickness. But all these bags are relatively soft body and squishy, so just be sure that you don't use anything like Decoville Heavy in there. I have not tried it with Decoville Light, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because this is supposed to be a soft-bodied pattern anyways. So we'll put these pieces aside, and we're going to start with the anchor tabs. I do not have stabilizer on these because I am using a faux suede, and it feels relatively thick, like a thin piece of leather. So I'm going to trust that it does its job, and I'm not going to stabilize it. So you're just going to grab your ruler and draw a line down the center of the long way on both pieces. And now if you want to use double-sided tape, you can. Otherwise, feel free to use clips if you'd prefer. I am a double-sided tapeaholic, so that's what I'm going to use. Go ahead and put it right on down the center. Take off the backing and fold the long sides into the line that you just made. Okay, now that those are together, I'm going to take a little bit more double-sided tape and lay it right down the center. And then I'm going to remove the paper and fold the short ends in towards the center. It does help if you make a mark, or if you want to hide your seam, You can kind of shift the closing over towards the side a little bit more. I just forgot to make my mark. I'm probably going to forget a lot of stuff, so sorry in advance. So I'm just going to fold that and then make my mark. I'm going to match it to the other side. Good enough. All right, now fold the short ends in. Just like that. All right, I'm just going to give it a little press. In fact, I think I'm going to give the sides a little squeeze too, because this is a lot thicker than I was anticipating. I've never used this fabric before, so wasn't prepared for how thick it was going to be. Okay, then take it over to your machine and you're going to top stitch a box around all 4 edges. Make sure that you have the joint part down if you'd prefer to have your top stitching come from the top of the machine. I am going to tie my threads at the back, so I'm keeping them long. Top stitch is at 1/8 of an inch. Gonna pull my threads to the back so they're out of the way. And then make sure that you end your stitching in the same hole where you started. Pull all your threads to the back, tie it off, and melt it if you'd choose. All right, and then set those aside. Next, we're going to do the wristlet strap. So go ahead and draw a line down the center of each piece. And of course, double-sided tape. Pull off the paper and fold the long edges into the center. I'm going to go ahead and throw some double-sided tape on the center of this one because I cut right up to the selvage and that part is coming up. So I just want to make sure it doesn't pop free. Well, I would have put double-sided tape on here anyways, but I just wanted to do a little bit early. Alright, I'm going to peel off the paper and stick these two together. Make sure you've got the folded seam in the center between both pieces. And then once that's together, top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now I'm just going to even these out. Don't need to, just because. All right, next I'm going to show you one way first, and then I'm going to actually do this a second way. Now, the quickest and easiest method is you fold it, and then you take one of these key fob pieces and you stick it on the end. This is too thick for me to stick it on here, but you stick it on the end, and then you use glass running pliers to clamp it shut. It's got these little double vampire teeth going on in there to help grip it to this. And by the way, here's a little tip. These are actually called glass running pliers, although a lot of people call them key fob pliers. Everywhere that I've found key fob pliers, they charge a lot more than they do for glass running pliers. So check your hardware stores or even the hardware section of Amazon if that's what you're looking for, and look for glass running pliers with a flat edge, not key fob pliers. All right, so next we're going to do the marks for the hook and the rivets, because that's the method that I'm doing. All right, so gotta clean off my pen because I didn't shove it into the cap far enough and it leaked. So that's fun. Doesn't that sound fun? Just a little bit of rubbing alcohol cleans it off really well. Okay, so lining up your strap with your ruler, you're going to make marks at 5/8 of an inch, 1 1/4 inch, 2 3/4 inches, and 3 3/8. And then turn it around, and you are again going to make marks at the 5/8 and the 1 1/4. And then go ahead and punch those marks through. All right, with those marks in, I actually have to grab some different rivets than the ones that I set aside because I didn't realize that this faux suede was going to be so thick. So on the side that you have the 4 holes, you're going to add your hook right in between both sets of holes. And I can already tell I'm going to have to trim this thing. I'm going to put my rivets into 2 of the holes and then fold the other side up and also insert those into the holes and see if everything lines up. Now, I was anticipating this because this is so thick. Normally I use a much thinner faux leather when making this bag, so I'm not used to it being so thick and hard to use. So if you run into an issue where you can't line it up, or if your hook doesn't sit nicely at the edge of the shorter side, go ahead and trim it down. I'm just going to trim quite a big chunk off because I don't know how much I'm gonna need. Let's see, I think I'm gonna trim a little bit more. I promise you, when you're using thinner fabrics, those marks are perfect for the holes. All right, I think I'm gonna have to adjust. This was kind of a dumb idea, making this bag with a thick material that I've never used before. It's a learning experience. Alright, I'm also going to use my glass running pliers to squish it down right where the rivet holes are. I'm going to do that in all 3 spots. Note to self, never make a small bag with faux suede ever again. I just thought it would go really cute with the vinyl. Alright, let's try again. You gotta love these videos where I'm screwing up right in front of you. Especially when I'm supposed to be telling you what to do, right? Alright. That did it. I think I need to squish it down a little bit more. But basically you want your hook to be able to move freely. It doesn't necessarily have to wobble on its own, but you want to be able to bend it. So I'm going to squish this a little bit more before I put the caps on. I'll just do 2 of the sides. Well, nobody can ever accuse me of trying to make things look better than they actually are, because this is very real. Get in there. I am just so happy that I have these extra long rivets. Thank you, Springfield Leather. Whoops. You're supposed to stay put. I'm going to go ahead and set this one first. I might end up remaking this later, just so I can maybe do it without the stabilizer in here. That'll make it thinner. But there we go. So that is the wristlet strap. So since I am going to remake this later, I'm not going to bother putting on my cap because I already know I use slender caps and it is not going to fit on there. But essentially what you're going to do is just install it so it looks like that. And I think it gives it a very nice finish. Looks quite nice. So I do like the suede, I just don't like how thick it is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to redo it without the Decoville in it. But there we go with that, and I will set that aside. Get these out of the way. And then we're going to move on to the handle. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing a pattern here, so I'm gonna go cut a fresh strap without having the Decoville heavy on, or light on it. I will be right back. Okay, so got myself a nice clean piece without the Decoville light on it. I'm gonna draw a line down the center again. And double-sided tape. Take off the paper and put your long edges towards the center line. More double-sided tape. And put these together, seam sides in, and top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just gonna shave off a little from the top. And then we're gonna go and do those marks again. This time I'm going to do it this way so I can be sure that I don't mess them up again. Okay, flip it around and do all 4 marks again. And punch the holes. Okay, now you're going to grab your D-rings, and I'm going to see if these rivets will work for this. Might have to swap it out. Yeah, I'm gonna swap this out for the big ones again. So in case you're curious, the difference at Springfield Leather, this is a long rivet, and this, hi buddy, is an extra long rivet. So as you can see, there's quite a difference. Whoops, that one went skating. I don't care. So, slip your D-rings on and pop in those rivets. I don't know if you're able to actually hear my cat or not. I got a new microphone today, so it's supposed to block a lot of outer sounds, background noise, like children running through the house and stomping and yelling, and dogs barking, and cats howling at me. Alright, go ahead and put the caps on the rivets, or on the posts, and set them. You know what, actually, before I set them, I'm going to do my end caps, because it'll make it so much easier not having to squeeze the glass running pliers in here. It's about time I start making some smart choices on this bag, huh? So I've got some little chompers, which are 3/4 inch little caps to go on the ends. I think I need to squeeze those just a little bit. There we go. Lovely. Yeah, this is definitely a lot easier putting the caps on before installing the rivets. Alright, so get them right into position and then chomp them. Alright, now I will install the rivets. Look how gorgeous that finish looks with this velvety color. Well, velvety finish rather. Obviously it's black. I love it. Alright, set that aside. And now we're going to move on to the chain. And I'm going to show you how to split these so that you can adjust your own chain length. So what you're going to need is your chain, a scrap piece of vinyl. You're going to need some of these pliers. Some people call them reverse pliers because when you squeeze them, they open instead of closing. But jewelry makers will recognize them as snap ring pliers, and you want to make sure that you've got the ones that have the teeny tiny little prongs or whatever on the end so that they're small enough to fit inside of your chains. And you're also going to need just a regular pair of pliers for closing. So the length that I want my chain to be is basically half of this. This should be 20 links. So I'm just going to make sure it's actually 21. So what I'm going to do is take this center one out. So very, very carefully, you want to stick that into the link you're going to split, and make sure you keep your fingers, especially fingernails, out of the way. Also, you're going to want to make sure that your chain is able to be opened, because if they are solid links, you're not going to be able to open them. So you want to make sure make sure that they are unwelded. That's the word I'm looking for. Alright, so I'll pop that in there, move my fingers, and just go slowly. And once you get it open, pull off the piece that you don't need. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, before I close it, I'm going to grab my handle, slip it over the D-ring, hold it at the bottom, and then wrap the vinyl or whatever your scrap fabric is around it. Make sure you get a good grip on it though. This one just keeps trying to slip out of my grip. And then use the other pliers to close it. Again, be careful. You don't want to pinch yourself or break a fingernail, because that crap hurts. Try this again here. I'm not getting a very good grip on it. Stop bending. Keeps trying to slip out of my grip. I swear to you, I have never had this much trouble getting this to close. Maybe it's because it's the 4th time I tried filming a tutorial for this bag. Alright, just go slow. And voila. Now I think this one had an extra link on it. Yep, so I'm going to go down by 1. Open it slowly. The end ring is trying to give me grief. Okay, I'm going to slip that link off, put it around my D-ring, and close it up again. And there we go. Now my handle is done. Just set these to the side. So now we've got the anchor tabs, the wristlet handle, and the main handle all done. So we will not need those again until the end of the bag. Alright, now it's time for the super fun part. Card slots. Yay! For this, I'm going to grab my 3-inch wide ruler. And starting at one end, we're going to call it the top. You're going to draw a line at the 3-inch mark. And then from that mark, you're going to draw another line at 1.75 or 1 3/4. Then from that mark, you're going to do it at 2.25 or 2 1/4. And now you're going to continue to alternate between 1.75 and 2.25 using the most recent line that you drew as your starting point. And then your last mark should be 1.75. So now you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 marks on the wrong side of the lining piece. So I'm gonna flip it over to the right side up and fold over at that first 3-inch mark. Make sure you grab some clips to hold everything in place. Now it's totally up to you if you want to lift and fold or flip over or hold it sideways or whatever you want to do. You just want to make sure that you do an alternating mark on each and every one of those lines. So for the first line, we folded towards the right side. For the second line, we're going to fold towards the wrong side. And I'm going to use my leather roller to make sure I get those creases nice and tight so that I don't have to press it afterwards. All right, and then continue on all the way up until you reach the last line. Okay, so now I have my card slots prepped for stitching. Just gonna throw a few extra clips in here just to hold it from slipping. All right. Next, I am going to measure to make sure I've got my center, and I do. So it's pretty much right along that seam, but just slightly off. So I'm going to use my Choco pen to mark that center line. And it's fine because I'm using black thread and it'll go over the black band. All right, so what you're gonna do is turn your card slots upside down, keeping it right side up. When I say upside down, I mean so the top is facing you, not the wrong side up. And you are going to top stitch down the center. In the instructions, I show stitching from the very bottom edge all the way up to the top of the card slots. But this time I am going to start right at the bottom of the card slot at the lowest point and then up to the top of the card slots. It's entirely up to you how much stitching that you have. There is no required amount. Totally up to you. Editing Nick here. I just wanted to pop in to say, first of all, I'm sorry I skipped step number 24. I was planning ahead not to top stitch my card slots, and then I completely spaced on even bringing it up as a step. So refer to your instructions, and if you'd like to, top stitch each of your card slots and then stitch down the center. I'm also going to pull my threads to the back so that I don't have to back stitch. Okay, you can leave your threads long if you want. I'm just going to singe them a little bit. If you do, just be careful that you don't burn your fabric. And then, just as a little bit of added security, I'm going to add a little bit of fray check along the entire stitch. And then I'm going to add a line of duct tape as well. All right. Now, here's a little tip. I use a piece of polar fleece to remove chalk lines. All right, now I am going to baste the sides at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just so they don't shift. And that's what it sounds like when you lock up an industrial machine. Or at least that's what it sounds like when I lock up my 8700H. One moment. Okay. All I had to do was pull the thread out and then restart the machine. That's why you gotta make sure that you hold your threads, and I was not, so. Okay, now if you want to even up your edges by trimming them just a little bit, you can. You don't have to. Now I cut my side pieces a little bit long. Or a little extra wide because I was not sure how this was going to line up because I suck at math. So I'm just going to guess because I am trying my damnedest to make this thing seamless or as close to it as I possibly can. And I don't know how well this is going to work. Here. So when you add your, oh, I didn't even say, grab your lining side pieces. When you add them, make sure that you try and line them up with the top edge of your pockets as well as you can, because you're going to trim it down and you want everything to be cohesive. All right, let's see how this way would look. I'm going to try it like that. I'm totally going to mess it up, but I don't care. At this point, I'm just trying to not be so particular. Okay, and then you are going to attach these at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I think I did better on this side than I did on this side, but that's okay. You're going to open those up and you are going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now I'm going to take, if I can find one of the fake credit cards that's always being sent to me by credit card companies who want me to open an account, and make sure that your slots work. And you should have a total of 10 slots if you did your measurements correctly. There we go. Now you're going to need to grab your pattern piece so that you can trim it down to the proper shape. However, I'm going to be lazy and I'm just going to use the other lining piece because I've taken the pattern down so many times, and I don't feel like getting up right now. So I just found the centers on my other lining piece. I've already got the centers cut out on my main pieces and flap. So I'm just going to line this up because yes, I did make it so that it would be fussy cut. So it looks like I'm not too horribly far off with my stripe lining. It's better on this side than it is on this side, but that's just because that one white section was just too wide. Oh well, it's fine. It's close enough. So I'm just clipping this in place. You can do the same with the pattern piece. Or the template piece or whatever. So just want to make sure it doesn't shift. And then before I continue, I'm going to fold back these sides and trim down the edges, because when you go to cut the corners, it's just going to be a little thicker. Best to just get it out of the way. Just be careful that you don't trim into your card slots. All right, now I'm going to grab a thinner ruler and go ahead and trim it down. And there we go. The lining pieces are good to go for later. Just set them aside and grab your flap pieces. So for the flap, you are going to need your exterior, your lining, and the female side of your magnet. And I got my magnet over here. I can't pick up the washer. There we go. Okay, so like I said before, I've got my Decoville washer on the one side. And then I also transferred a mark on the right side so I would know where to center my lock. So I'm going to go ahead and put the washer marks on here. And then I'm going to slice those through. Now, if you are doing a different type of closure, such as a twist lock, or a slip lock, or whatever you're doing, if it does not basically come together in the same position as the magnet, then you're unfortunately going to have to come up with your own measurements, because I only plotted this pattern with the magnetic lock, so, or the magnetic snap. All right, so that fits in there perfect. Now I'm going to grab some E6000, which is an industrial super glue that I use for like everything. Back when I used to do polymer clay sculpting, I used it all the time. And then when I stopped doing that, I had so much of it on hand that I started using it for sewing, and it just works perfect for keeping hardware from shifting too much. So just put a little dab on there, pop it in there, and then I'm going to add the washer. And I'm going to use my pliers. Easiest way I can explain this is when I use pliers to install these things, and it's on like my bag labels, locks, all kinds of stuff. I push down onto the edge of it, and then I tilt to push the prongs in. And I do that on both sides because then, without hurting my fingers, I'm going to get this thing in as tightly as it's gonna go. So I push down on the side, right up against the prong, and tilt. Then once it's bent, I just shove it down and tap it into place. So I'll do it again on this side. Push, tilt, and then complete the push, tap it into place. And then I'm going to add some more duct tape right there. And in all honesty, it might be easier to install the lock after putting your flap together. You can do it however you choose. I always forget about that after I've installed it, but I'm not going to uninstall it this time, just to go back and make it more convenient for myself. Nope, I brought this on myself, so I'm gonna suffer through it. So I'm going to clip this together. I'll just have to swap out for my walking foot. That'd probably be the, or not walking foot. God, I wish I could use a walking foot on this machine. I'll swap out for my zipper foot. Try and get this lined up as best I can with my notches. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and get this part stitched on, and then my top stitch I'm going to swap out my foot. So you're going to put this on at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Oh, look at that. I lost bobbin chicken. Okay, then I'm going to use pinking shears to trim the seam allowance to half. Paying close attention to those corners because you want those to be nice and tight without getting too close to your stitching. Okay, and then we're gonna turn this right sides out. And I'm just using my chopstick to get those corners out a little bit further. It'd actually probably be easier to use the these guys so I can grip it and push. There we go. That looks nice. All right, now I'm going to use the tighter clips to hold this all in place. Fully prepared to be breaking these because that's been my pattern lately. I've been going through a lot of these plastic clips. I don't know why. I don't manhandle them or anything, but they just don't like me. So Lauren, stock up because I'm gonna need to get more. Okay, I'll just pop a couple up here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my lefty zipper foot because I want to not screw up my stitches. Of course, that being said, I'll be screwing them up anyways because that's just how I roll. Come on. Get in there. What the hell? Ugh. Not nice. You need to be nice to me. Nobody else is gonna oil you. Come on now. Alright, now I'm going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna hold my breath, cross my fingers and toes and tongue and not my eyes because then I'll stitch through a damn finger. Alright, here we go. Here's a little tip when stitching around corners. Go one stitch at a time. Turn slightly. Stitch. Turn slightly. Stitch. Turn. Stitch. Turn. Stitch. That one didn't count. Turn. You're being mean to me again. And if you do that, then you get a nice curve to your curve. All right, here I go. This is the part I was dreading. Oh my God, I got a lot of skipped stitches. Lube up my needle. I can fix those. My machine just does not like me tonight. I might have to pause and come back to this tomorrow. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4 skipped stitches. Oh boy. Okay, well, I'm gonna fix those and then I will be back. Okay, I fixed my stitches as good as they're gonna get, so now I'm just going to baste the back of this together. I also need to switch back to my other foot because I don't enjoy using zipper foot. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna set it aside and I'm going to grab my exterior panels and I'm going to install the other half of my magnet as well as my bag tag. Okay, so I'm just going to draw the marks from the washer. I'm going to do the same for this one, but I'm going to continue my marks just so I get it lined up properly. I'm gonna cut my lines all the way through the front. May as well cut these ones too so I can put the blade away. Okay, I'm gonna make sure my lines all the way through, and that is. Get a little more E6000. Alright, so just go ahead and install the other half of your magnet. Alright, that bit's good to go. Set that aside for a moment. And then I actually have to open up my prongs for this. And there's a little bit of dirt stuff behind there. Okay. Make sure that my holes line up here as well. And they do. Oops, unfortunately, it covers Raul's face. That's okay. Or Gomez, if you don't know who Raul Julia is. He was only the best Gomez Adams, in my opinion. Alright, I'm going to take a big glob of the glue and spread that over back of my tag. By the way, if you are looking to get your own bag tags, mine came from K&A Fabric and Hardware, or Fabrics and Hardware, and they don't currently have a pre-order open for them yet, because they have 2 pre-orders that have already gone in. But you can join the K&A Fabrics and Hardware group and message Kim or Alex and see about getting on the list for the next pre-order. And they offer pretty much all the finishes. Anything other than like those reds and purples and blues and greens and all those crazy colors. But they have, they've got the antique bronze, they have antique chrome, I think it is. And then they have, or antique nickel, I think. And then they've got regular nickel. They've got gunmetal, rose gold, matte black, rainbow, gold, and the bronze. I think I already said that. I have 2 more finishes that I'm still waiting on. I'm waiting on matte black and gold. And other than the antique nickel, I've got all the other colors. So you design your tag. Their manufacturer does the mock-up. You approve the mock-up, and then you can proceed with the order. I promise you it's painless and totally worth it. Alright, so those puppies are in there. So now you're going to take your lining pieces and your exterior pieces and some clips. And you're going to fold right sides together each of these darted corners. Just pop in a couple of clips to hold them in place. And then repeat that on the lining as well as the exterior. And before I go any further, I'm going to stop myself right here because I just did something that I have a tendency to do, and I apologize for that. I always, I never go at the exact, in the exact direction that instructions go. So I'm always doing things ass backwards. If you are experienced enough to do a drop-in lining and that's the way you want to go, you don't have to do this right now because you can stick your flap in later. But if you are doing the turnout style that I have written in the pattern, you are going to want to baste your flap exterior right side to right side of your back exterior panel. So just clip it in place. Make sure it's exterior right side to exterior right side. And you're going to baste along the top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I also recommend back stitching at the front and back of, or the start and stop of your stitching, so that when we're flipping the bag around, the sides don't come up, because they do have a tendency to do that. So go ahead and baste that down. Now we're good to go. Now, I just want to state, nobody can ever accuse me of being a completely organized professional tutorial video maker, because while I may like to teach people how to do things, I never claim to be a professional at making tutorial videos. So forgive me if I do things ass backwards. It's just the way it goes. So we'll continue on, following the steps correctly this time, and clip the rest of the darts. Now, when you sew these together, you are going to want to do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the exterior panels and a 3/8 inch seam allowance on the lining panels. And this is going to prevent soggy lining. So drop your stitch length down to whatever you like to use. I use a 3mm. And then go ahead and stitch those darts closed on the lining 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then again, a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the exterior. Okay, now take one of each piece, one lining and one exterior, and flip it so that it's right side out. And then you're going to nest it inside of its opposite side. Line up those corners. And clip them. And here I go out of order again because I can. If you want to, you can trim down your seam allowance. I'm going to do it after I do this because I like to fold out my corners. I did not put that in the instructions because I didn't. Now that's one of the things about instructions for patterns. You know, it's basically guidelines for you to follow, and whether or not you choose to follow them is absolutely your choice. And me, I wrote the pattern and the instructions, so I do what I want. Cartman says so. Alright, so as if you can't already tell, because I suck at verbalizing this stuff. It happens when you film the same thing 4 times in a row. Clip all of the edges together, making sure that you start with the corners and the top edges. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. And now for the lining, I am going to trim these down because they're a little bit thinner, so they'll be easier to work with when folding those edges. Okay, so again, flip it right side out. Grab more clips, and line up those corners, and then I'm going to fold them out. Clip them. Okay, now I am going to try my damnedest to line up my stripes, because that is why I fussy cut. Okay, so you can put clips all along the bottom if you want to stop it from shifting. But you really don't need to, because we're not going to stitch the bottom of the lining closed just yet. No, we're gonna leave it open for turning. Okay, put the rest of those away. Now, adjust your stitch length if you need to. And as I said, on the lining, we're going to stitch down from the top to the corner. We're going to pivot and come out by another inch or so. And then we're going to start again at the bottom on the opposite side, go back to the corner, and then stitch up to the top. So you're going to end up leaving about a 5-inch gap at the bottom. Also, on the lining only, not on the exterior, you're going to stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance for about the first inch down from the top. Then you're going to go diagonal until you reach a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then you're going to stitch down and stop where I told you, start where I told you, go back up to the side at 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then taper back into a 3/8 inch seam allowance. That is also made to help reduce saggy lining. So and if you're unfamiliar with the term saggy lining, it just basically means that the lining inside of the bag is really loose and bubbly, and it does not conform properly to the size of the outer fabric. All right, so again, we're going to start at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. hold on to your tails. Don't forget to backstitch. All right, so we're gonna go down just about an inch, and then I'm going to pivot diagonal and start sewing straight down until this edge hits 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to pivot straight again and continue. Now I will say I do have a plate on my machine that marks where my seam allowances are. If you do not have a plate on your machine, then you can either lay some painter's tape and write out the marks yourself, or you can find a shop that sells the stickers that you can lay over your machine. Now this is personal preference, you don't have to do this. When I get to those corner seams, I go right on top of the seam and then I backstitch and then go forward again, and then I go just past the seam, backstitch, and then continue sewing, just to kind of reinforce those corners. Okay, then I'm going to get just about an inch away from that corner. I'm going to back stitch and forward stitch a few times, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, so you can see where I back stitched, and now I'm going to go to the mirrored position on the other side roughly. Half an inch seam allowance. Forward, back, and then I'll continue sewing. And then I'm going to start pivoting back into the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then straighten it out and back stitch. Okay, now I can remove my clips. And I'm going to use my pinking shears again, and I'm going to trim the seam allowance to half, only along where I've stitched. When I get to where I back stitched, I'm just going to veer off to the side. Now, that part is done for now. You can set that aside. And then you are going to stitch around the entire curve of the exterior at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do not leave the bottom open and do not change your seam allowance. And then I'm going to trim the seam allowance to half on this as well. All right, clip cleanup. We are almost to the finish line. Go ahead and turn the exterior right sides out. So now you can get a little bit of a sense of what your bag's going to look like. I'm loving it. But apparently my hardware just does not like Gomez. Alright, so now you're going to take a ruler and I'm going to use my Choco pen. You can use any kind of removable drawing utensil. And you're going to line your ruler up so it's 1 1/4 inches. You know what, let me double check my instructions. I want to make sure I get this right. Yes, 1 1/4 inches away from the top edge. And you're going to want to draw roughly a 3-inch line or so. Doesn't have to be exact because it's just a marking for where you're going to lay your pieces up against it. Okay, do the same on the other side. Now you are going to grab, I should have bent these while I was working on the rest of the bag. So you're going to grab your anchor tabs and we are going to grab our ruler again and we're going to mark a dot at 3/8 of an inch on each short side. Wow, this pen is just inky. I'm gonna have to start storing it right side up or something, or ink side up, tip side up, whatever the hell it is. All right, 3/8 of an inch on both. And then go ahead and punch your holes. All right, and then I'm gonna have to clean my pen again because I need it and I don't want to get ink everywhere. Naughty, naughty pen. Okay, so what I like to do is remember which side of the bag I use a tab on to mark it, and then I try and retain that location just in case the marks are slightly off. So When looking at the bag like this, I'll know that this is on the right and this is on the left. So I'm going to take the right-sided tab and I'm going to lay it up against that Choco line. I'm going to move the flap out of the way. Now I'm going to use that center seam on the back as my guide, and I'm going to lay it right up against the seam on the side of the bag with the top edge of the tab lining up with that Choco line. And then I'm just going to transfer my marks. Okay, so now I've got both of those marks on there. And now if you want your tab to be a little more loose and not so flush to the bag, then I would recommend moving your marks inward. I think about 1/4 of an inch roughly should be good, but it's entirely up to you. Because these are so stiff and thick, I'm going to go ahead and move my marks in that 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to leave this tab on this side, flip the bag over, take the other tab, line up those center marks, make sure the top of the tab is flush to the Choco line, and transfer the marks. Then I will move them in by 1/4 of an inch. Make sure you line up your lines with that Choco mark to keep your lines even. And I don't see, oh, there it is. Whoops, that's 3/8. There we go. All right, and go ahead and puncture your holes, making sure to keep your flap out of the way. Oh, and I set that down in the wrong spot. Again, remember to keep your flap out of the way. Okay, when you're done with that, now I want to double check and see if these rivets will work for the thickness of my vinyl. They should. Yes, they will. Okay, so punch your holes and then put the rivet posts in through the wrong side of the exterior. Make sure I don't drop my hardware anywhere. Come on. There we go. Okay. So put a rivet post through, add your tab, stick on a D-ring, and then you can either put a cap on that side or not, but then pop the post through the other side. Or as I show in the instructions, you can pop the posts in first, both of them. And then put the tab on that one and put on the cap. So as you can see, the D-ring's a little bit loose right now. It is going to tighten a little bit. Just a little, not a lot. Once the bag is fully assembled. Alright. Put in the posts. Put on the tab. Put on the D-ring. Put the tab on the other post. And put on the caps. And then go ahead and set your rivets. Make sure that you keep both the flap and the D-ring out of the way. Okay, and make sure those rivets are in tight enough, because it will be really hard to go back and fix it later. All right, you ready to be almost done with this thing? Now we're going to pop the exterior inside of the lining, and pay attention to what side you want your card slots to be on. If you want them to be towards the back, then you need to make sure that you put the flap side towards the card slots. If you want them in the front, then do the smooth side with the male end of the magnet on it. Alright, so squish it in there as best you can, and then you want to line up those edge seams and clip everything into place. I'm going to use a stapler on just my seams. Just because sometimes I find it easier to keep things lined up when I do. Okay, when you've got that all lined up, go ahead and stitch it together at 3/8 of an inch. Now, if you choose, you can trim down the seam allowance. I'm going to leave mine intact. So now I'm going to turn my bag out. Be careful, keep in mind you have hardware, and don't force it. You don't want to accidentally rip any of your fabric. There we go. And in the instructions, I do say that you can close off your bag now, but if you would feel more comfortable, you can leave it open until you've got it top stitched. Now, I'm going to, just like I do with the Narcissist, put my bag back inside out so that I can top stitch, and my top stitching will look better than it would if I stitched it with the bag right side out. This is a personal preference. This is not something that's in the instructions. I'm not recommending you do it. This is just how I do it. So you're going to want to straighten out that top edge and get some clips in there. When it comes to the side seams, I like to pinch those just to kind of thin them out a little bit so it makes it easier to stitch. Okay, and now you can either back stitch at the start and stop of your stitching, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my threads through so you can't see the stopping and starting point. So I'm going to leave my threads really long, and I'm going to start kind of right about an inch away from the side seam. If I can get this part straightened out, there we go. Top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I stop my stitches about 1 stitch away from where I started. So now I'm going to turn my bag right side out again. Then I'm going to take the 2 threads that are on the outside and I'm going to put them onto a sewing needle, a hand sewing needle. First, let me trim this. I could really use a needle threader right now, but I don't know where they are. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to stick both ends, or rather both of the exterior side ends, through one of the holes. I'll go with this one. And then I'm going to push it down in between the exterior and the lining. I'm going to use my hemostats to pull the needle out because I'm good at stabbing myself with needles. It's not fun, so I'm not going to do it voluntarily. Alright, and then I'll just pull the needle out so those threads are now inside. And then I'm going to do the same with the 2 threads that are on the lining side. Okay, put my needle down. And now I'm gonna do my best to get the other ones. I'm going to tie them in a few knots. Just wanted to make sure all of the threads are pulled nice and tight. Nothing's looping on the outside. I think 4 knots ought to do it. Gotta make sure I get all 4 threads, not just 3 of them. Alright, 1 more knot. And then I'm going to trim them about half. And I'm gonna drop some fray check on it. I could burn it, but I'm not gonna bother. Alright, now I'm gonna make sure all my corners are poked out the way they should be. And then we're gonna seal the bottom. So just pull it out, tuck those edges in, and then clip them together. Now I'm going to drop my stitch length all the way down to 2 millimeters. You can use whatever you feel comfortable using. And I'm going to try and stitch as close to the edge as I possibly can. And then I'm just going to singe the ends just to make sure that nothing is sticking up. You can see how close my stitching is there. I could have gotten a little bit closer, but it kept shifting. So then you're just going to shove the innards in the side of the bag. I like to double fist it. And then make sure those corners are poked out. Squeeze the bag a few times. It's squishy. And then we'll close it up. Add your handle or your wristlet strap. And she is done. Ta-da! And that is the Greedy Clutch. Hopefully you were able to follow along and my chaotic brain didn't throw you off too much. Having the instructions next to you is a great idea. And if you don't follow along with the video, I'm hoping that the instructions were easy enough to follow. I tried to write them as simplistic as possible that even my complicated brain can understand, because I have issues with instructions. But so I will end up making a new strap before I post this bag for sale. But for now, It's 5 o'clock in the morning and I need to crawl into bed for a few hours. So thanks for following along, and be sure to join the Hollow Bag Creations, the Patterns group on Facebook, so that you can show off your bags. Oh, sleep, here I come. Bye.